Are you ready to totally change your life's course? Maybe you're sick of the politics and rat race here in America. If so, this is the video for you. For those of you who follow my channel, you already know that I plan on living throughout the world. To do so, I've been on a journey building passive income, traveling, and buying international properties. I learned the custom of the locals, the cost of living, and determine if the country I'm visiting feels like home to me. So far, I've publicly shared that the USA, Colombia, and Italy are on the list. But after visiting this magical country in 2019, home to over 200 million people and some of the best soccer players on the planet, I think I found country number 4. Here on ENTP Life, we mostly talk about real estate and business, but in this series, we're talking about Brazil. I'm searching for my next property and taking you along for the ride. Maybe by the end of it all, I'll motivate some of you to uproot your life and move to this country that has truly managed to fuse cultures and people. This is episode number 1 of a multi-episode series that will offer travel tips, highlight different cities to live in, and how you could break free from comfort that home provides to live a life abroad. If you're excited about this series, please like, subscribe, and share this with someone you know who has flirted with the idea of leaving the United States. Agora, vamos ao Brasil. First stop on this trip is to Sao Paulo. I'm flying out of MIA Airport direct to Sao Paulo, where I plan on meeting Yusuf, fellow YouTuber and ambassador to Americans interested in making Brazil their new home. The flight to Miami to Sao Paulo is direct. It takes about 8 hours. Fortunately, travel is still dead and flights are empty. I was able to fully lay down for my overnight flight. In the blink of an eye, I arrived. I landed at GRU Airport, hopped in an Uber, and chose to stay in Bela Vista at the Cadora Hotel.
Bom dia. Mauro, tudo bem? Tudo bem, pode deixar. E você? Tudo ótimo, graças a Deus. Adoro, Augusta. Sim, sim, sim. Yes?
Sao Paulo is a sprawling city with over 21 million residents, making it the 4th largest city in the world. As a world city, expect to find people from all countries, expats and local citizens alike.
Vai check-in. I'll go check-in.
Sorry?
I'm gonna check in.
I checked in, made my way to the 26th floor, and scoped out my room. I was happy with what I got for just $60 a night. Next, I was off for my morning run. After working up an appetite, I linked up with Yusuf Watif for lunch.
Are you taking a picture of me?
So here's a little backstory. Yusuf came across my Pimsleur video right here on ENTP Life, where I highlighted my affection for Brazil and the desire to learn the language of Portuguese. He commented and we started to chat offline. It turns out that he has a channel and I was featured on his channel. Since then, we've stayed in touch, and since I was in Brazil, I decided that I wanted to reach out to him and meet him so I could document his journey and his reasons for leaving the United States for Brazil. After getting settled with Yusuf, he wanted to show me around a bit. He knows that I'm a bit of a foodie, so he planned a trip to the local market so I could take in some of the sights, smells, and flavors of Brazil. When walking through this market, I felt I had been transported to the markets of Spain. It is common to come across open markets like this where friends and family meet to enjoy fresh delicacies and chat over drinks. Given that Spain and Portugal are neighbors, it makes sense that there is some overlap in food and culture that made its way over to Brazil during Portugal's expansion in South America. You can't help but get wrapped up in emotion being bombarded with vibrantly colored produce, music, and the smell of all the food. If you're visiting Sao Paulo, make sure to stop by Mercado Municipal for a taste of when Portugal meets South America. Our next stop is to meet up with some of Yusuf's friends for dinner and to chat about relocating to Brazil. He's really an interesting guy who gives some incredible insight into life in Brazil versus the United States, race relations, the cost of living, and dispels some of the myths about living in South America's largest country. A lot of people would say that you're living the dream, right? You're an American-born dude living in Brazil. What actually brought you here?
I have lived in about 15 countries. Before this, I was living in Shanghai, China. What brought me to Brazil was I trained in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so I always had a connection that way. And I hadn't lived in South America. Brazil had a sterling reputation for the food, the culture, the weather. So I decided, I normally spend about 2 years in every country I go to. And well, for Brazil, that was 5 years ago. After a couple of years, I decided I first want to spend a year. After my first 2 years of just enjoying it, I said I want to spend 1 year finding out everything I don't like about the country, everything that doesn't work. And I spent a year really focusing on the things that I didn't like and weighing that against whether or not I wanted to invest the time and the resources into becoming a permanent resident and a citizen of Brazil. And I decided it was definitely worth it. Definitely worth it.
Now that we're talking about work, what would you say is like the average cost of living if you're going to live like a middle class, upper middle class lifestyle here in Sao Paulo?
Well, let's do it this way. Average is a tricky word, you know, and what we need is also a tricky word. So I'd like to do it this way. I run an expat relocation services business. And what I tell my clients is that if you come to Brazil and you have a way to earn 300 US or more per week, doing whatever it is you do, maybe you're retired, maybe you have residual income from an investment, maybe you just work on the internet. You can live in the top 10% of people. For example, I have a small 35, 40 square foot bachelor pad apartment with a small kitchen, small living room with a sofa and table, small bedroom, and I pay about 250 US dollars a month, and I'm 15 minutes away from the heart of downtown.
You said 45 square feet, but I think you meant to say 40 square meters or something along those lines.
Sorry, 40 square meters.
Which is about 400 square feet.
No,
I know
wait.
some people would be sitting there like, what? 45 square feet? That's like 6 by 8.
No. So let's call it 30 meters just so I cut the difference. We'll say 30 meters. It's a bachelor pad.
Exactly.
You know, you could live there one person very comfortably, or two people if you really knew each other well.
So just to put it in perspective, your apartment's costing between $200 and $300 a month. It's a studio apartment. And you said that someone who's earning $1,200 US
a month
would be in the top 10% of earners in this city.
In this country. So you have the beauty of living in a place like Sao Paulo, Brazil, or any other part of Brazil, because in Brazil, Sao Paulo is the most expensive city. But living anywhere in Brazil, you could live this way or better. I can spend 50 US dollars a month, and as a big weightlifter guy who does jiu-jitsu, I could spend 50 bucks US a week and still not get close to eating all that food. Not even close.
Gotcha. So what would somebody be doing here for work to actually make that 1,200? Me, I invest in real estate, so I have passive income from that source.
Did you guys want something to eat?
Depois. Moça, eu falo português pouco. Eu preciso muito praticar.
Você precisa praticar português? Então vamos falar português.
Sem problema, tá bom.
Okay.
So based on what you're saying, you're paying between $200 and $300 for a studio apartment.
Right.
And that if you're making $1,200 a month, you're in the top 10% of earners.
Yes.
But how does somebody go about earning that number here in Brazil? I teach people to invest in real estate and potentially stock trade. There's plenty of things that you could do to earn from the US, remotely earning in dollars and earning larger amounts. But if somebody isn't invested in the United States and doesn't have that revenue stream coming from the US, how would they earn $1,200 a month here in Brazil?
And this is where it can get tricky for people. Most capitalism doesn't produce entrepreneurs. We like to pretend that we do, but we really don't. Almost anything that you do for yourself right now, find out whether you could do it for one or two people privately over the internet. Or something, you know, for example, I have clients that have seasonal jobs that require them to go do a specific duty for 3 months. And in that 3 months, they might make $35,000, which isn't very much in the United States, but then they'll come back to Brazil and live for the other 8 months and not have to work, which I don't advise. Everybody should have something to do.
Just to kind of piggyback off of that,
Right.
I did a segment where I was saying a nurse, a traveling nurse,
Yeah, I love traveling nurses.
who could work 3 months, 6 months out of the year in the United States. They could do 3 months in LA or San Diego, 3 months in Miami, earn enough to live a life in maybe 75% of the world comfortably,
Yes.
traveling, seeing the world, etc. That's one of the things that I would also recommend. So when you say that you have people who are working these seasonal jobs, do you include nurses? Or
Absolutely, I include nurses. I have clients, because with my company, I help people find out not just where to live, but how to get a social security number in Brazil, how to get a health number in Brazil, how to become part of the public healthcare system, which is one of the best in the world. It's people like that that make the transition who are already in a situation. I have clients who are merchant marines who are on a ship for 4 months and then they come here and just relax for 8. I have clients that do internet businesses where whatever it is, I have clients that teach online, for example. I have professors that teach online at their university. I know people that are authors. I have friends that do real estate like you do. I have friends that simply invest in other businesses in Brazil and live off that residuals.
Awesome. Okay, so plenty of options, plenty of choices.
For someone who wants to do it, the choices are there. Most people don't want to do the hard work. Because I tell people all the time, living abroad, Brazil or any of the countries I've lived in, it's worth it, but it's not easy. The trick is, neither is living where you are.
When talking to my friends in the United States, and I'm encouraging them to potentially move out of the United States, I find that they're resistant because they'll cite things like, what about the crime rate? Or I've heard that they're extremely racist in the country, or that they're not very fond of Americans. People who are in the States have like this skewed idea of what the rest of the world is like. But now that you've been here in Brazil, how much do you say it compares or contrasts with the narrative that is spoken about of Brazil in the media?
Well, let's do it this way. Don't convince anybody of anything that didn't ask. One of the things that helped me to, as I rapidly approach maturity, as I tell my friends, I don't try to introduce new thinking to anyone. Now, if someone comes to me and says, hey, I have these questions, glad to help you. The first thing we'll address is the racism issue. If you are a black American, you have already survived the worst racist institution in modern history. There's no place you can go where it's going to be worse. So let's just say, oh yeah, well, Brazil's racist. Well, first of all, racism exists in every country in the world to someone. But if you survived America and you're an adult, it's not going to get worse, I promise you. I promise you it's not.
Okay.
Crime. People ask me about crime, and I always say to them, well, I ask them the question, well, where do you mean? They say, well, crime in Brazil. And I say, well, where in Brazil? And they go, you know, Brazil. And I say, where in Brazil? And they have no answer, because I say, well, what about crime in America? And they say, well, what do you mean? I said, exactly. Exactly. Downtown big city in any country is dangerous. Stop talking to me as if Brazil is the only. Listen, I didn't live in poverty in the United States. I don't live in poverty here. I don't go to poor neighborhoods. I don't go to places where the police are known to frequent. I don't go to places where criminals are known to frequent. So I don't have any problems with crime. I've never been robbed. I do have some friends that were walking downtown.
And what they were doing, hold on, and I'll show you. They'll come to Brazil and they'll go downtown and they'll do this. Look at me, Mom, Dad, I'm downtown and I'm in Sao Paulo, but oops. And some kid who realizes that phone might be more than he's gonna make all month will take off running with it. But as far as like crime, like, give me your wallet. In order for me, I'll give you this example. Let's talk about the worst crime. Let's talk about murder. Let's talk about
Premeditated just murder.
You can get killed anywhere in the world. Only in America could I be murdered in a movie theater
Watching the premiere of the new fun movie.
Only in America do children go to school with bulletproof backpacks. Even the lowest class of criminal anywhere else in the world would never even consider.
They wouldn't survive in the entire criminal.
Criminal underworld. In America, you can simply be shot for being
black in a place where people don't feel it's appropriate for you to be by an average citizen.
So you would say that crime here is going to be more poverty-driven.
Yes.
And petty crime where people are taking advantage of opportunities just to survive.
Yes.
But I always say something different. I say, look, you're usually going to run into crime when you go out there looking for it, right? If you're out there looking for drugs, ladies of the night, sketchy neighborhoods, for whatever reason, you're going to be more susceptible to crime, not only because there's more crime activity happening in those particular areas, right? The person who's selling drugs is a criminal.
Right.
Right? So,
and so is the person buying the drugs.
Exactly.
Like, if any crime ever happened to me, I can go straight to the police because I'm not doing anything wrong.
Exactly.
I'm not going to be in a situation where they say, oh, well, you know, he was living in. But you got to remember,
Most people need to justify to themselves why they never took
the chance to have better.
Exactly.
You know, prior to the internet, when someone left home, we would always have an idea in our mind to say, well, they're probably living the same life here in another city. Now, we are being forced, particularly as Black Americans, to acknowledge we have choices. Not all of us,
but those of us who are educated, ambitious,
that can make it,
we can go anywhere.
and a lot of us
Are being forced to say, I could stay here in a country.
By the way, I tell people all the time when they ask about living in Brazil and leaving America, I say, well, first of all, America never turned on you. It was never your country anyway. You owe them nothing. If you are a Black American, if you are a Native American, Indigenous, First Peoples, you owe America nothing. Leave. Take whatever education you can get. If not, you might have to work a lot harder to find it someplace else. But you're going to work just as hard in any capitalist environment, except I don't worry about having the police shoot me in the back of the head or strangle me unconscious or children being murdered in school.
Right. See, the way I look at it, I also look at it from a slightly different perspective. Being born in America, regardless of race or regardless of anything, means that you have access to a few things that most people don't. First of all, the minimum wage earner in the United States already isn't the top earners in the world, right? You're going to be in the top 5%, if not
Most
the top 1%.
people don't know that, though. Most people don't know that.
Yeah, most people don't know that you're a minimum wage employee in the United States. You are the 1% of the world, for damn sure. And what I try to tell people is like, all right, you were born there. You almost got a head start in a way that you are a native English speaker, which tends to be in high demand in other countries, and also in most developed and developing countries, the people who are educated and the people that you need to interact with are also cross-trained in English. You have access to credit in ways that people here, I know for sure, can't get a credit card as easily as a college student who just turned 18 with no
Which, you know, I got to be clear about that. I worked in the financial business as a financial professional, dealing heavily in whole life insurance and mutual funds. Personal credit is evil. Like, one of the things that I've had clients get angry at me about is I haven't used credit in, I don't know, since I was in my 20s. I tell people all the time, if you can't buy it, don't buy it.
Yeah, I don't believe in that. I actually believe that
business credit is a different issue than personal credit, though. I'm not talking about credit to have an office that you need to work out of. I'm talking about the credit people use to buy
stuff. Oh no,
stuff.
Nobody should use credit to buy stuff. People shouldn't even be buying stuff in the first place. That's ultimately the worst use of money, like accumulating stuff. Yeah, I accumulate stuff that interests me, but I understand that the stuff that I accumulate really has no value in the world.
Right.
But someone who wants to up and leave, for instance, let's just say they have $25,000 of personal credit cards, right? And they want to up and leave the United States because they're sick of the politics, sick of their position in the world, just hate the weather, whatever it is, could actually go buy a ticket to a new country, right? Really have almost no limitations on where they could go, have enough money to start a new business, have enough money to fund their life for at least 2 years on that $25,000 credit card and figure it out. So there's really no limitation.
I'll tell you what the limitation is. The limitation is being different. In most cultures, the person who is different is the person who is bad. Most people will not have I'm trying to think of the correct word. I'm going to use an incorrect word as a placeholder. Most people don't have the courage to leave comfort and, more importantly, the people who are going to be average around them. Remember, it's easy to be average, to be just like your cousins, your brothers, your sister, and your parents. When you make the decision to say, you know what, I want more, you've immediately cast out 80% of the people you know. They will give you that look of, how dare you want more for yourself? Don't you see all this stuff we have?
Or it's not possible.
It's not, you know.
No, it's not. You'll talk to somebody about wanting more, and they'll immediately start giving you rebuttals for why you can't get the more. That's reserved for the rich people. That's reserved for people who are born into upper class families. That's reserved for the college boys. That's reserved for, the boys club, whoever it is. Or that's reserved for men. Women don't do that sort of thing. Automatically, people start to project their own insecurities on your ambition.
Right.
I think it tends to be the bigger problem. But I always try to bring it to a granular place to show them that you in fact have something that allows you to make the move and really limits most of the things that cause people not to be able to leave their current situation for what they perceive to be better, right? People who are trying to leave Brazil to go to the United States for financial gain can't, right? They can't get the visa. They won't be allowed in. They don't have the money for the tickets, right? They can't afford the flight, and it's not an option to them. But somebody in the United States with basic credit access and the ability to speak English and a passport really has the opportunity to pursue
Let's go back to something you said earlier about a job. What a lot of people don't know is that teaching English as a second language, not to children, but to adults, you can earn a middle-class income almost anywhere in the world. On my YouTube channel, there is a video called "She Asked Me How to Start an English Teaching Empire in Brazil." And I taught a young woman the things that she needs to know. She is a college graduate, but there are certain certifications you can get, and I did one on my Patreon as well. There are certain certifications you can get that will make sure you can teach English as a second language and earn a middle-class income. Most people don't know that.
Gotcha.
To adults, to business people.
So if we could break it down to 3 things that you love about this country, what are they?
3 things I love about Brazil. 1, okay, you've heard of Carnival in Brazil, right? Let's not talk about Carnival. Carnival isn't even in my opinion, as someone who lives here, Carnival is great, but it's the number 2 great. There's something you can Google called technical ensayo, and I put a bunch of videos on my YouTube channel about it. What people don't know is that before Carnival, there are
12 to 14 weeks of practice of all the different samba schools, all the different academies going through songs and dances, and they have these big events, and they're family friendly, and you can every Friday, Saturday, Sunday go listen to all kinds of new music in great environments. That's
probably my number 1 thing I love about Brazil. Number 2, Brazilians are vain. Brazilians like to look good. In America, me going to the gym, at 43 years old, I'm one of the oldest people in the gym. Here in Brazil, there are men with stark white hair looking at me, excuse me, are you done with the squat rack, young man? Because they like looking good and they see the value of looking good and they take the value of being in shape in a way that Americans just don't.
Number 3.
It's a warm country in that if you learn the language, respect the culture, you can become quote unquote brasileiro. They don't exclude foreigners, they include foreigners. You speak the language, you respect the people around you, hey, come on down. I've never been invited to more barbecues on the weekend than here. Those are probably my top 3.
Okay. So if somebody wants to become a brasileiro, what are the steps for them to take?
Depending on who you are, where you're from, what your passport,
There's no fast answer for that. And I'm going to shamelessly plug my business. Anyone who wants to find out who I am professionally can catch me on LinkedIn. YUS as in spectacular, EF as in fantastic, WATEEF, Yusuf Watif. You can catch me there and on YouTube. My expat relocation services business, what I do for people is find out who they are, what they need, find out what governmental practices, governmental visas they need, and make that meeting happen so that they can become Brazilian or come to Brazil, become a citizen or become a expat or
whatever it is that they need to do it legally.
Awesome, man. Let's eat. So what do you think about Sao Paulo? Could you see yourself living there? Let me know in the comment section below. For people who plan on relocating to Sao Paulo, check in with Yusuf Watif for guidance to get situated. Remember, if you can make $2,000 a month passively, you can live an upper middle class lifestyle in Brazil. And if you need tips on how to get your finances in order to support yourself so that you can actually take this leap, make sure you check out my video on how to retire with just $10,000 in savings. In the next video, we're gonna head to Rio de Janeiro, visiting Copacabana, Barra Tijuca, Cabo Frio, and Búzios. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. Thanks for joining me here at ENTP Life. Take care.